Hey, and welcome back to ConTinual and another episode of the Panel Room. So tonight we're going to be talking a bit more about holiday horror because, what's more scary than the holidays themselves? But before we dive into it, I am your host, Jim Nettles. Let's go around the room and find out who else is here. So, Ty, we're going to start with you.
Okay, my name is Ty Drago. I'm a published author, 10 novels, 10th one's coming out next year. It's a horror novel called Rags, coming out through Eastbeck Books. I'm also the author of the Undertakers series, a 5-book middle school horror. The first book's been optioned for a movie. So that's exciting.
Yay.
And I also got a short story in a holiday anthology series called Fright Before Christmas, where Saturn comes back to wreak vengeance on the people who have stolen his holiday from him. That's
DeAnna?
what I am. I'm also the founder, publisher, and editor of Allegory Online Magazine, which publishes science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So there's my curriculum vitae.
Oh, well, we're about to miss one in there. So DeAnna, how about you?
I'm DeAnna Knippling, and I used to be a ghostwriter, so I've written over 70 novels now, and I write pretty much everything except for erotica and Christian. My last big novel that I published was a gothic horror called House Without a Summer, about the year 1816, which is the year that Frankenstein was written. But it's not about Frankenstein. It's about a house that has no summer. And where did that summer go? We will find out. You can, I have a micro press, Wonderland Press, and I also hang out with a friend of mine, Jamie Ferguson, to publish the Amazing Monster Tales series of pulp fiction stories with monsters.
Patrick?
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm distracted now because I'm trying to decide how I can write Christian erotica.
I know it's like the challenge, but it takes so much of a skill set. You would be shocked at how difficult it would be.
Isn't that just the Old Testament?
But hi, I'm Patrick. I am a writer. I have several short stories, several of which are horror published, as well as some science fiction and speculative fiction. I am also a podcaster. We do a horror and humor actual play podcast that we call an audio drama with dice. And I'm a photographer. I am also a person who pours wine at a tasting room in the Pacific Northwest. So there's my curriculum vitae.
And if everybody shows up and tells them you saw them on ConTinual, he'll buy you a glass of wine.
I get to push the podcast a lot while I'm pouring wine.
And Adam?
My name is Adam Stemple. I'm a writer of damn near everything. I got a dozen fantasy novels out that are middle grade, young adult, some dark fantasy, urban fantasy. I write horror and literary and science fiction and fantasy short stories, some poems published, a picture book about birding, some graphic novels, and a dozen children's music books. But I've got a horror story that should be coming out right about the time of this podcast in the January issue of Dark Recesses. Called Simon's Teeth.
Nothing like horror to bring the holidays, or wait,
That's
nothing like the
right.
holidays to bring the horror, something like that.
And when you talked about ghostwriting, DeAnna, I was in a bookstore today and someone picked up the Bill Clinton and James Patterson book. And I said, do you see the picture of them on the back? And they're like, yeah. I said, that's the entirety of their involvement in the books. And the guy said, that's ridiculous. They probably did some radio interviews too. I'm like, they did no writing of this book, just so you know.
Well, maybe there was a note on the back of a napkin that said, include this scene. Oh, wait, no, never mind. We're back to the erotica now. So,
Bill Clinton and James Patterson erotica is horror. I am going to write that, but
Hold on, wait. I'm writing these notes down first. So,
that's right.
Everybody's going to
Simon,
with a writing assignment.
Simon's Teeth came from a panel,
there's Hillary
an idea on a
Clinton
panel
and
where another horror writer and I were both like, I got dibs. I'm like, no, I got dibs. I wrote it in the airport on the way home from the convention just to get it out there first.
well, my most recently published piece, which is in Stories We Tell After Midnight 3, an anthology of horror. That one came out of a writers meeting that we had over drinks during Pandemica. So,
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe this sounds like an anthology we can sell Rachel on, Go.
I wore my Crone Girls Press author all through my last convention.
Let's try. Let's see. What it would be called?
Things
the
we did in
blood
the
and
Oval
the
Office after
cross.
midnight.
For the blood, the cross, and the whipped tales of Christian erotica. How's that?
Only because rum, sodomy, and the lash was already taken.
I gotta say, I think there's a special room in hell for that.
Costs extra.
In erotica.
Because-
A lot of
what
bias
do
against
the
Brune.
royalties look like?
All right, so I am going to try to rein this in just slightly.
I
You're a
spent
new
my
one.
life-
Come on.
There was no waiting. It's just
Are you kidding? Last I saw, there was a line. So let's talk a little bit about, because holiday horror. A lot of people don't necessarily put the two together, but the oldest traditional stories we've got. Think about Scrooge. Think about any of these kinds of tales that we would deal with. All of these things, our oldest tales around the holidays in this time of year, really were ghost stories. They were horror stories. So for you guys, what was the first kind of horror or ghost tale or something like that we connected to the holidays that you would remember and that might even be an influence till now? So Ty, since you're grinning like that, you get to go first.
Oh, this is embarrassing. When I was 6 years old, I saw Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, and it scared me so badly that I was terrified to go to sleep for weeks afterwards. No matter how many times my parents tried to explain to me that it was a stupid cartoon. But there was something about the way Marley rattled his chains and screamed that just got right into my lizard brain and stayed there. So yeah, that scared me bad. And to this day, when I write horror, that flashes back into my head and I try to recapture that feeling.
It makes you feel any better when we had the show on the Christmas Carol and actually talked about a Christmas Carol. We spent a lot of time talking about the Mr. Magoo Christmas special.
Did you really?
Yes, we did.
every adaptation of Christmas Carol pales before the Muppets, but they are all awesome. I remember the Mr. Magoo one. It was fantastic. He was it was the role that Mr. Magoo was born to play.
I pictured
Really,
him
I
as
just figured he
Marley.
stumbled in from off the street, not knowing where he was.
How about you, DeAnna? What's your first one?
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the TV special. It started out with just this horror of the abominable snow monster. I forget his name or not, because
The
he's
Bumble.
so big and he's so bitey, and he turns out to be nice and everything. But as the years went by, you're kind of like, these guys, they're kind of jerks. The horror of the island of misfit toys. That's what it built to over time. Is first you were scared of the monsters, and then you were scared of what people did to them.
And the biggest monsters were the heroes that were supposed to be, because nobody cared about Rudolph and his red nose until it was a nasty storm.
That's right.
Santa was a bit of a jerk.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Patrick?
The Star Wars Christmas special.
Now, granted, I will absolutely grant you the Life Day special was quite horrific. And I mean, if you really want to go down to it, just to make you feel better, just to make you feel better, there we go.
All right. Well, yeah. So I've been you asked the question. Of course, I came into this panel trying to anticipate all the questions that might be asked. That wasn't one of them. So I'm going back through all the horror that I've seen and trying to connect one that I early on connected to Christmas. And I mean, I've just got to go back to Christmas Carol too, not the sequel, but as well as, and that
I was racking my brain for Christmas Carol too. I was like, wow,
Christmas Carol Brooks production,
where we find that. No, it's just that I've always read and watched horror all through the year. So there's probably all sorts of things that I saw early on that I associated with it. But one of the ones that's standing out here, and I would have been a little older, so I know there was stuff before this, but Gremlins, that's the fine Christmas stuff right there. And then I just started reading M.R. James's horror stories, actually, and because he wrote those to read to his friends around Christmas. So those are an interesting take on the Christmas horror idea that we have always associated the holidays with a little bit of horror, anyway.
I'd like to jump in there and say that A Turn of the Screw is another story that was written for that. The frame story is absolutely a group of friends gathered around a fireplace for Christmas.
All right, Adam, how about you? What's your earliest, fondest, most terrifying Christmas memory?
I don't even know if it's Christmas, but for some reason I always associated it with Christmas, maybe just because it came around once a year and was a big thing. But my mother still is a writer and a fantasist, and loved her some Wizard of Oz, and that would come around once a year, and we'd always all sit down as a family and watch it. And unbeknownst to her, I was terrified by this movie and would have to watch it. And I also had an undiagnosed anxiety problem till my late 30s, depression and anxiety. So I literally would spend 3-4 months worrying about the upcoming showing of The Wizard of Oz. And it felt to me like it was always coming on the holidays. I don't remember. Does anyone remember? Am I that old? That
I don't remember.
We'll go with yes. It was
We'll
always
go with
around the
yes.
holidays.
This is back when we still had to run to pee during the commercials.
Yeah.
It was truly a horrible existence. The horror of existence in the 80s cannot be, holiday or no, cannot be understated.
Well, and the fact that, she didn't go run to grab the Dark Side of the Moon album to start it with the film too. I mean, that just.
I did do that, but I'm really too high to remember anything fun about it. It was really, I think, just if you smoke enough weed and put any album on, it's going to be amazing.
The Wicked Witch was green. Margaret Hamilton was green because it was a Disney ripoff.
Mm.
They were because she's not green in the books. And they did it because the Snow White had been such a hit, and the witch at the end of Snow White has green skin.
Do you know why Frankenstein was green?
It's a black and white movie.
Yeah, but and then somebody got us, and they used green paint to make it look deathly gray. Because gray would come out as too dark, so they used green, and then one of the pictures accidentally got onto a movie still of him green, and that's where it began. Then it became canon that Frankenstein was green in the movies.
The famous story in my family that when my father was 6, he got up in the movie theater and ran out of Frankenstein. He was so scared.
Well, Frankenstein. If only we could get Frankenstein to be the ghost of Christmas past. Mm-hmm. If Frankenstein's monster would make the great all right. Well, I'm going down the wrong rabbit trail. So anyway.
Okay, I'll take that story.
The original verbose monster, or or just stomping around with bolts in his neck?
No. The verbose monster, but the real monster is Dr. Frankenstein, and he's visited by the 3 undead experiments of
The
Christmas.
ghost of Frankenstein.
Christmas
Monsters
past will
Past.
be like the dead rabbit or something from the very beginning. I forget what it is. And then there's Christmas present is Frankenstein's monster, and Christmas future will be the bride.
Oh.
Well, how about if he's visited by, Boris Karloff's Frankenstein's monster, then Christopher Lee's Frankenstein's monster, and then Robert De Niro's Frankenstein monster?
Yes, but I want to have
It
the
just
bride
gets
of
worse and worse and
Frankenstein
worse.
going, ee!
Or it
Well,
could
we
be-
need to
or
have the son of Frankenstein in here somewhere so he can be Tiny Tim.
Yes.
and you can get what was the Penny Dreadful Frankenstein, and it's just everybody having sex and killing each other.
That's somebody else. I don't do erotica.
Christmas future.
And now we come back to
This is back to
Christian
part of the
erotica.
the Christian erotica.
So let's kind of hop in. So for you guys that have done some Christmas horror, let's talk a little bit about your stories. Let's talk a little bit about the influence side of it. And Adam, I know you haven't done any, but now that you're going to be inspired to do it, we'll play with you as well in here. So DeAnna, how about you? What was your big inspiration?
The Christmas story that I wrote is for Midnight Bites. It's for the Christmas issue for Mother Krampus, for editor Rachel Brune. And the story is titled, I always forget this, you know what they say about a woman in red stockings? It's about the female spirit of Mother Krampus. And what inspired me was kind of similar to something like this. Rachel was joking around about needing more Mother Krampus stories. And I said, well, all right, then I'm in. Mm-hmm. And I tried not to rely, because my only previous experience with the Krampus myth had been the movie Krampus at that point. I tried not to rely on that too much and just brainstorm a list of different directions I could go until I got something that sounded fun.
How about you, Patrick?
Well, this is going to sound very familiar, but I had a Mother Krampus story in Rachel Brune's collection of Midnight Bites about Mother Krampus. And it was called, if I can remember, nope, I'll just have to look it up. It was called The House You Build. And it's about a daughter who has trouble with her sibling and wants to summon, do a ritual to bring Mother Krampus to punish the bad kids. Actually, she thinks that she's summoning Krampus, but it doesn't work out quite like she had hoped. And that one, I had a couple of ideas for that one, and I was just answering the call for the Mother Krampus stories. And I initially had this vision, because I know that they do these parades, these Krampus parades overseas. I believe in Denmark is one of the places they do them a lot. And so I wanted to do something there where there was a mistaken identity, and where Mother Krampus comes to punish the bad housekeeping of somebody, but that one just wasn't coming together. And then this story about these kids just sort of popped in there. And of course, it's always fun to put kids in danger around the holidays.
Well, the bad kids. I mean, you got to do something with them, right?
Yeah.
How about you, Adam? Any stories floating around in your head that you'd love to tell for the holidays?
As we're talking about this, were I to do one, which I probably will now after talking about it, there's a lot of, I might go the other way and do a more futuristic realism horror, where because I grew up an atheist Jew who still celebrated Christmas. We always refer to it as all the pomp and none of the circumstance, as far as taking the Christ out of Christmas. So I would probably do something where there were some purge-like sacrifices of my people by the true Christians around Christmas time, and I would have a family hiding from that, because that's honestly never far from our minds. It would be very little erotica in the Christian groups.
All the Christmas horror stories that come to mind now are all like Doctor Who Christmas specials.
How about you, Ty? What's in your closet of Christmas horrors?
Well, the one I published in the anthology was called Saturn Rising, and it's about the concept that the old god Saturn, whose solstice holiday Saturnalia turned into Christmas, he's bearing a grudge about that. And once a year, he picks a person at random, torments them for a week in their dreams, and then shows up at their house and rips them limb from limb. And this particular story is about a 12-year-old boy who is singled out for no other reason than blind bad luck by Saturn, and decides to fight back. Had a lot of fun with it. I mean, the Saturnite that manifests itself looks a hell of a lot like a demonic Santa Claus. Santa with leathery wings and a huge maw full of sharp teeth and claws, and yeah, so I had a lot of fun with it. There is a fine line between horror and comedy. And
the Futurama Christmas Santa.
Yes. Ho, ho, ho.
I'm confused by that kind of story now, being as old as I am, because how does he pick someone at random now that there's no longer any phone books?
Man, you have seen the plot hole.
I found it.
You know, I just recycled the phone book that my town sent out. So they do still put them out. Could still be done.
I used to run in every time as a joke and just shouting, "The new phone books are here. The new phone books are here."
Well, you know, Ty, here's the thought I just got from the visual I just got about your Krampus, is the idea of Pumpkinhead wearing a Santa cap. I mean, that's just it.
Kinda, yeah. Except, girthier.
So, because there's Mother Krampus, of course, was a nice little inspiration. And I've written my own Krampus stories, a couple of them. And up until a few years ago, really nobody had an idea who Krampus was, except for, I think Family Guy brought in Krampus. A couple of shows like that. When was the first inspiration you heard of from Krampus, and kind of what was your big take there? And all this hopefully is before the bad horror movie. But so Adam, how about you? What is your take on what is kind of becoming the reclaimed Christmas horror now?
Well, what I mainly know about Krampus is just the weird the pictures of Danish parades and of the very odd devil creatures, because I like looking up all the old all the strange parades people do around the world for holidays. The burning of the Viking boat and these but really, I have not researched me some Krampus. I'm a big solstice Beltane guy. I was born on Beltane Eve, so I'm a big summer solstice, and happy winter solstice to everybody, by the way. I've used the solstice in a horror story that's coming out very soon.
And we are recording this on the solstice.
Yeah. See, it's all happening. It all happens on the solstice.
What about you, Ty?
When did I first learn of Krampus? Oh boy. Many, many years ago, doing research into American history and the German mercenaries who were brought over. The Battle of Trenton and all that. And I found a reference to this creature that I'd never heard of before. And I got curious and I started poking around. And this is in the library. I mean, it's sitting in the library. And I ended up going to the reference desk and asking the woman about it. And lo and behold, the woman was a font of information. oh, I know about Krampus, blah, 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 blah. And she found all these old pamphlets, a lot of the Danish and German parades. And it was, yeah, I went home and told my wife, did you know there's a anti-Santa?
I've got my new Christmas holiday story idea. Just now, the one that's happening. The last horror story I published with Rachel, it was in one of the Midnight Bites, and it's a World War I horror story. So I think I can do a Christmas truce in the trenches where Krampus shows up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hilarity.
Oh man! Wow.
Yeah,
Nothing
World War
like
I is bad enough, right?
nothing like a little bit of
Shaking
light
hands
comedy.
with the enemy and then
How about you, Patrick?
I can't pinpoint it exactly because what I'm thinking of doesn't specifically say that the Santa-like creature is Krampus, but I believe that it was Rare Exports, the 2010 Finnish movie, that made me first get into that idea of the anti-Santa. And I believe that that's probably where I began hearing about the idea first, anyway. And Rare Exports is an awesome Christmas movie. It's on my annual Christmas movie watch list. So,
I don't
I
know.
only
I've
watch
seen
horror
that
movies at Christmas and Love Actually, but
I heard.
You kind of go for the polar opposite there, don't you?
one.
If you think
Mine's
Love
bad
Actually
Santa,
isn't
but
horror, I don't even know what you're talking about.
how about you, DeAnna?
I first started hearing about Krampus about the time the big movie came out, or slightly before. Probably what happened was the Family Guy fans that are in my life started, being like, "Oh, I know something about folklore that you don't know." And what really grabbed me was I had run into this idea before, but the idea of having kind of like a dark mirrored god really caught my attention. Like in Slavic mythology, there's a light god and a dark god, and I'm spacing on the names here because it's not my home mythology.
It starts with a PE. I just did a story with them, Brune and another, and they're all sometimes they're
Gazbog and Chernobog or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're the same person.
Right.
Both right off
And
the
I-
tongue.
American
and I'm like, oh. So when I first heard about Krampus, I thought it was the same dude as Santa Claus. Just like first we're gonna sneak around, put the ugly mask on, and start beating the shit out of the bad children and the horrible adults that have abused them. And I was actually kind of disappointed to find out there were two different people. But okay, it's still cool.
Santa's personal demon.
I had, this is not particularly Santa related, but there was a book that we horrified our children with, which was the what to do with your tooth when it's fallen out, all the different traditions of the world.
Thanks.
And
Right now I have a very, very, very loose tooth, and
Perfect.
Dennis says within a month.
It might have been Haiti. You have to put it in a can and shake it all night to keep away the demon from coming and stealing your soul.
Great. Now I'm
Okay,
gonna have to do
that
that.
ties into
Thanks so very much.
that reference ties into Hogfather by Terry Pratchett, which is his Christmas carol. It's basically his Christmas book.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
Mhm.
that one of the characters in there is takes over, assassinates the tooth fairy, or replaces the tooth fairy and starts stealing children's teeth so they can control the world's belief. Their goal: to wipe out Santa Claus.
It's a goal many of us have had.
So looking and kind of going beyond that into the scope of holiday horror. I mean, kind of classic holiday horror we see a lot of is, Christmas Carol. It's the ghost stories. It's, even if we look at things like A Wonderful Life, the premise of A Wonderful Life is a horror film. Yeah, at the end of it, he gets his wings and all the rest of that good stuff. But I mean, so many of the stories we see around the holidays really are horror stories, even if they're wrapped in the nice, shiny warmth and all the rest of that. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. So for you guys, what are kind of the elements of a nice holiday themed story? What pulls you into the story? What are the things that you want to see or read or hear or play with that tell you, oh yeah, the holidays are here. It's time for the real fun and the nightmares. So Patrick, we're going to go with you for that one.
Well, of course, horror is best served with the normal, with the everyday. And so for the holidays, if I want some horror to lead, to be in there, but I want it to lure me in. I want it to be the Norman Rockwell Christmas. I want snow, and I want families gathered around tables of food with warm lights while and a fire in the fireplace, while outside it's cold and snowing, but they're cozy inside, and we think that it's all nice and safe. And they've got lights on the tree. The Christmas tree is up, and there's lights on the house, maybe. And it's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, but with the alien xenomorph.
I was just picturing it, Christmas Vacation, but it's the Krampus that shows up. I
think I've seen the alien xenomorph wearing a Christmas hat, and it did not make it less scary. Normally a Christmas hat makes things less scary, but no, it
didn't work in Gremlins either. But
yeah.
So how about you, Adam? What is it about holiday horror, about this time of year as we're going into the winter and the time of death?
It is, like Patrick said, the horror going with the normal. You have so many just plain saccharine tropes of Christmas that when presented in a certain way just melt into horror easily, even if it's just like a single, you're watching someone walk down the street with the Christmas lights and the and the sails in the windows and the decorated trees, and it's a single note in the soundtrack or certain word choices in the description that lets you know that all is not well behind the normality of it. And I've always loved that. I just did that in a story for a suburbia horror anthology, and just the horror of suburbia just in describing it plainly. And you can almost do that with Christmas stuff, because everyone knows that, at its heart, Christmas is about deep, deep disappointment.
So Ty, how about you?
When my son discovered the lack of Christmas, he said he was so sad, and he said, all the magic has gone out of the world for me. And we felt like bad parents at that point.
Nothing like being a parent and crushing the soul of the child.
Exactly. It's our job.
How about you, Ty?
I like the idea of taking the tropes and turning them on their ear, because when I say horrors in comedy is a fine line, they follow a lot of the same rules, where you take a normal situation and you turn it on its ear, and that's either a source of horror or comedy, depending on how you play it. I've always thought about Australia and how it's Christmas in summer. And wouldn't it be interesting if there was some little town way out in the outback that was terrified of Christmas, because every year a version of Santa showed up who was thin and sweaty and was carried on a sleigh dragged by 8 enormous crocodiles, and just laid waste, because that's how he refueled at the end of every
comes right in the front door.
That sounds like 30 days of night or something, only it's 30 days of noon or something like that.
It's the same kind of thing.
Ooh, 30 days of noon, I like that.
It's the same kind of thing.
I'm picturing, instead of leaving Santa, the milk and cookies, it's leave him an oil can of Foster's and shrimp on the Barbie and something to feed the gators.
What?
that kind of thing has always interested me. I always like the idea of Santa getting stuck somewhere. Because they say, sometimes they'll travel with smoke down chimneys and things like that. Always thought it'd be interesting to get sucked into a boiler. I actually wrote and published a story called Miracle in Boiler 4, which is about exactly that. And this handyman is trying to get Santa out of the boiler. Not exactly a horror story. It was more toward the comedy. But,
Santa probably would disagree.
well, he was pretty eager to get out of there. I'll give him. But
remember, horror is when something bad happens to you, and comedy is when something bad happens.
That is a very good point. But yeah, that's what I got.
And the hero is, the poor guy just trying to get him out of the boiler.
Yeah.
Who wasn't supposed to be there that night anyway. So that's the wrong movie. How about you, DeAnna?
I'm going to go off on a side note because of that boiler thing reminded me of something. When I was a kid, we had this long involved story that at my great grandmother's house, there was this furnace and it was old fashioned. And so to get to the light, you went behind this metal grate, and behind that was a weird glass door. And they weren't using this furnace anymore. So we decided that the boogeyman was in this furnace and it was trapped there and you couldn't open it. And of course, there was always like the one kid who was not always me, I swear to God, who was like, oh, it's not scary. There's nothing in there. And they would open it up and the rest of us would all be like, we now have permission to torture you for the rest of the weekend at great grandma's house because you opened the door to the boogeyman. And I'm like, how can I use that for a story? That would be awesome. Santa Claus is now trapped in this furnace and has been for, why isn't Christmas the way it used to be? Well, there's a whole reason behind that.
Maybe Krampus has been trapped in there for the last couple of generations and now you let him out.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, letting Krampus out.
I don't know. That's a bit, I might have to play with that too. We'll see. But what I look for in a Christmas story is, I don't really, I can appreciate the Christmas stories that are reversals of things, but what I really want is the weird character, the messed up characters, the grotesque characters trying to pretend to be normal. That's the part that always enchants me. The things that I like about this season are how dark it is and you can see little glimmers of light. And I just always think about like the monsters trying to circle and like, yes, am human, very human. So human am I. I get to come into the circle of light from the darkness. I'm normal human like you. Yes.
I am human like you.
I am human like you.
Very Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
And a Santa cap.
Yep.
We have a Jewish joke like that too, where the guy is trying to join the country club and they say, where do you live here? And what's your name? Oh, my name is, John Christensen. And they're like, and what religion are you? And he says, oh, I am Goyim, like you. So humor of my people.
So are there particular things that you'd like to play with during the holidays? Because part of the joy of being a writer means you get to look at those things that, everybody else finds love and happiness and joy in, and then, turn them, torment them, snap them with a rubber band, and prove to people exactly how wrong they are. How much more joy can you get in life? What is the favorite trope around this time of year? And, the holidays. And Adam, whether it's Hanukkah, whether it's Christmas, whether it's New Year's, whether it's Thanksgiving, whether it's solstice, we've got so many options this time of year. What's kind of the thing you like to take and twist and play with, or see played with? Because there's so many of the tropes that we see get used and played with this time of year. What's the favorite thing you'd like to see or love to watch played with and turned on its ear? So DeAnna, I'm going to start with you on that one.
I'm so not ready to answer this one.
I'm ready.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Because for me, it's 100% religion. And I do this in writing, in songwriting. And it's not, and I don't necessarily do it to torture people just because I'm an atheist, but I do it because religion is such a hot box issue with nearly everybody. Even the non-religion, you can use religious metaphors and then turn them, and they have such an emotional impact on a deep level that some people don't even realize they have. Because like you said, I mean, you know, whether or not you are religious yourself, if you grew up in America, you've grown up inundated with Christian themes and holidays, and you know, and the phrases and words we use are often infused with it and it's on a level that a lot of people don't even know is there. And so you can play with those tropes and really have just an absolute in past the brain, past the guts, right to the heart and soul of somebody without them even noticing it. And it can be especially effective playing with that stuff on holidays, religious holidays. And mind you, this gets me in a whole lot of trouble sometimes, but it's a price I'm willing to pay.
So what's the favorite one you've played with so far, or the one that's gotten you in the most trouble?
Oh, I can't even say the ones that have gotten me in the most trouble. He said this was a PG-13, mostly PG-13. But I made T-shirts of the worst one, and it was not good. Yeah,
but you stuck to the season. It was commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's, my whole, when we were talking about the sweet stories around Christmas, when people are talking about, Jesus is the reason for the season, that does not end well for Jesus. Jesus is this, it's a cute birth story, but it's a horror story. Things go very poorly for him.
All right, Ty, how about you?
Me? Oh, I'm next. I don't do that much seasonal stuff myself. I will say, it's kind of a sideways answer to this, is I recently saw what may be now my favorite Christmas movie of all time, which is called Fat Man.
Is it Die Hard?
It is not. It is better than Die Hard. It's better than Die Hard. It is more Christmassy than Die Hard. Fat
No
Man
such thing
stars
exists.
Mel Gibson and as Santa Claus. Living up in the North Pole with his wife and his army of elves. And he apparently is a real person who runs a business and is subsidized by all the different nations in the world because he's such a big marketing promoter at this time of year. And so he gives all the presents out every year. And one kid who's a little rich sociopath, gets coal in his stocking and gets so angry he hires a hitman to go up to the North Pole and murder Santa Claus. And so this hitman goes up to the North Pole to murder Santa Claus, and bullets start flying. It is such a great idea.
Does Mel Gibson get shot in it? Because then I'll watch it.
Repeatedly.
Excellent.
And he has a great line where he says to the hitman, "You think you're the first? You think I got this job because I'm fat and jolly?"
Speaking of the world's most famous, or at least America's most famous anti-Semite, or Mel Gibson.
Hey, Australia's. Thank
The
you.
irony of that is not lost on me, believe me.
Yeah.
How about you, Patrick?
I think probably one of the things that comes out in a lot of my writings is nature.
Watch out behind you. By the way,
I'm just a head in the dark. Oh,
Complete with a jump scare, dinner and a show.
why look, it's a Christmas miracle.
Christmas miracle. It's a Festivus. It's a Saturnalia miracle.
But I touched on it, I think, in my little example from earlier with the, cozy family inside and the snow going outside. Well, if you're caught out in that weather, it's not good. There's, it's all very nice and everything when you have the structure when you have the safety of your family, of your home, of the fire in the fireplace, of central heating. But if you don't, then there are horrors in that, of course, obviously. And I think as a person who's a fantasist and a fiction writer, to touch on those aspects, an idea is bubbling along in here of, a Christmas horror story among the homeless, of those who don't have that structure, and of something out there that is taking away rather than giving. And just nature in general is mean, but
How about you,
that's about
Deanna?
what I got, I think.
I love those stories that start with a horrific setting and then get even worse. Like I said, in my World War One horror story, half the characters die before the horror element shows up, because it's trench warfare in World War One.
And that was bad enough.
Yeah.
Well, and then you almost hope, for some monster or something that you can actually point to and say, this thing,
Right.
this supernatural thing, this at least I can handle, this I can wrap my head around, ironically, because I understand it, rather than the sheer incomprehensibility of regular horror.
At least it's personal. It's
Yeah.
not it's not just nature doesn't care whether it kills you, it just kills you. Ditto Sarah
Impersonally.
Yeah.
Nature is the ultimate one to come down and look and say collateral damage. And that's when you roll a die to see, do you get that nat 1 or nat 20? So Deanna, how about you?
I'm going to go back to kind of the answer that I gave earlier. The thing that I like best about Christmas stories is when they tap into kind of the old gods that we don't quite believe in anymore, but we kind of half acknowledge the power that they have over us, even if it's stuff that just kind of comes out of the psyche somewhere in some ugly spot that we collectively believe in. I really just like it when, even the most innocuous Christmas stories, they tap into this and you're like, yep, there it is. It showed up again. And the one that just crossed my mind is, strangely enough, Miracle on 34th Street. We were talking about how a lot of Christmas movies are kind of based on horror, and like a god shows up and tells you where to shop. Is the story of that plot, and people don't know what they're invoking or what they're summoning when they come to this store. They don't know what they're dealing with. They don't know how narrowly they escaped being judged in many cases. They don't know what could have happened had this old god been, slightly annoyed that day. So I just always like it that there's these dimly mythical figures that you're not really sure where they are or what they're from, but we're sure they're beneficent. It's all going to go great, Yeah, I just like the fact that people just walk by these immense figures and have no clue.
I'm picturing back in the old days of, back when people went to malls. I didn't, but back when people went to malls and they would hunt you down.
It was the 80s. I definitely went to malls.
I'm picturing Athena working one of the perfume kiosks down the middle of the hall, trying to chase you down and then getting pissed off because you won't stop and talk to her, and all the mayhem that would then ensue.
I feel like the Santa kind of counts as one of the old gods, or one of the, I think a lot of what you're talking about is like digging into these Jungian archetypes that are presented as old gods or as Santa. And I think that the appeal of the Christmas is it's a Jungian archetype that you don't have to you don't have to search for it. You know that all of your readers are going to know everything that you know about this character, so you don't have to do a lot of explaining. You can dig right into the emotions that brings up. I always think that way because I was a songwriter before I was a long form writer. So if I'm writing songs or poetry, I'm a wildly successful poet because I've sold 3 poems for money. And if you ever talk to a poet, they will tell you that is a wildly successful poet.
Yeah.
So
There's a horror story in itself trying to get poetry published.
It is. Oh, it's a horror story of epic
Poet running amok.
Especially I found some good markets to sell these, and then my mother, who writes a poem a day and sends them out to subscribers and writes children's books and has published over 400 books, is in asking me, hey, where'd you find these markets? And I told her, go to hell, Mom. You're not stealing my markets. And normally I'm a very giving writer. I share these with everybody but my mom. To know these little side markets. Not okay. But I got off track there. The point is, I'm always thinking in the short form. And in the short form, you always need words to do more work for you than just describe the actual thing. And Santa is one of those words that, Santa, Jesus, Christmas, they all evoke and resonate a lot more than just the guy in the red suit. So it's these kind of ideas and concepts that resonate into far deeper emotional recesses, which then when you're writing horror, you turn to evil. It's just, you use them for evil, not good.
Well, and that kind of brings me to one of the ideas I always like to play with. And Ty, this definitely goes to what you were saying earlier, which is comedy and horror really balance on this weird teeter-totter. And you can go back and forth, and you're always having to run that line. And a lot of the time, there's some of the stories that I know I love, especially around this time of the year, really carry that balance, and they could go either way at any moment. And some of my favorites are all of the Futurama Christmas specials and holiday specials. When you look at those stories and the way that they told them, I mean, if you ratcheted it one way, I mean, Santa with a rocket launcher and, Tommy gun and everything else. And, the Christmas song that they've got for that particular Santa is going to take your ass out if you're out on the streets at night, having Christmas ornaments that are exploding. And I mean, it wouldn't take much of a twist to that, other than the fact you're already in their known universe, but wouldn't take that much of a twist to make that a nice, dark horror story. And looking at some of the different holiday twists. So is there a holiday story that when you look at it, and it could go either way, but is there one you look at? Because I mean, then there's the really poorly done horror that we see, we watch, we read, which really is just too funny for words, because they miss the horror, but they sure as hell hit the humor. Is there one for you, whether you've read it, seen it, watched it, one of these that you go back to over and over again, just because it really kind of defines it for you, even if it was one of those things where they either hit the mark dead on or they missed it so poorly that you can't resist but to go back to it? So who wants that one?
Are we
All right,
talking,
Patrick, you volunteered.
are we talking purely holiday ones?
Your choice, dealer's choice. This is my gift to you.
My personal favorite horror movie, and I came to horror movies fairly late for a very weird reason. There was a guy in my alternative school of like 20 kids total, and so 5% of my school wanted to be a serial killer and ended up ritually killing a girl and then possibly hanging himself. And he had his own personal library of like 500 slasher films. So I kind of avoided it for a while, because this was like when I was a teenager. But got into it late and went much more the dark fantasy route. So that's a weird story to talk about. But the one that was pitch perfect for me, walking the line between comedy and horror, because it was truly scary and it was truly hilarious, was Cabin in the Woods. And it was so self-aware about all the tropes, and then the casting, I thought, of every character was just perfect for both hilarity and horror. Sorry to bring in actual killers to the talk. Here, I can turn my light back on.
Nothing says holidays.
Nothing brings a horror panel down like talking about actual serial killers.
We don't want actual horror.
That's you gotta do your research. I wrote a story kind of based on that guy, and it's so disturbing that I always have mixed feelings when it gets rejected, because I'm like, damn, my story got rejected. And yet, do I want to be associated with a publishing house that would take this kind of story?
Depends on how big a check they write.
That was the one I brought to the my writers group, and then as right before they critiqued it, I said, I just want to remind you guys, I am not a serial killer. And they said, Adam, we've read the story, don't believe you.
Isn't that just what a serial killer would say?
Exactly.
Just remember, when you're sitting with a bunch of horror writers in the diner and the police are sitting behind you, always have a business card that says writer on it.
Yes.
That way it gets you out of everything.
Yeah. I'm definitely on some NSA both tapes and web searches.
Glad to contribute to your file.
Remember also that your chances of being murdered by a horror writer are very small, but they're never zero.
There is a non-zero chance you will be murdered by a horror writer. If you're a character in their book, it goes way up.
It's easier to kill you on the page than it is to get rid of the body.
Oh, if I've taught my children one thing, is that you have to bury the teeth separately.
You have to shake them in a jar all freaking night.
Yeah, don't want that soul stealer.
That's right. Well, my father did teach me how to dig a grave in frozen ground. So anyway, next question.
So who else has some nice comedy horror balance?
So it's not exactly another property. It's just that because the podcast that we do is horror and humor, we actually have to, contemplate that balance all the time. And we don't often get to go all the way over into the humor side, except for this last session that we did, where we did our Krampusnacht holiday horror special, and I just decided we were going to go a little crazy with it, and so we did it was Cruise Ship to Terror, and it was a Christmas cruise, and they're out at sea, and these meteors crash into the ship and all around in the water, and then they are attacked by red, blue, and green striped octopi. And so the whole episode was a little madcap, but of course there were also horror elements in it. Usually what we do is we have a lot of horror, a lot of bad things happening, dark things happening to the characters, with some humor interspersed in to lighten the mood, to ease everybody down a little bit before the next bad thing happens. But this time there's humor, and then suddenly, bam, you are hit with some horrifying things. So that's what immediately comes to my mind. The second thing that comes to mind is Groundhog Day. And perhaps because there's snow involved, but also that could so easily shift over to the horror idea. In fact, it does and I'm trying to think of the name of the movie, where the protagonist, she lives the same day over and over, but she keeps getting killed at the end of it. And she keeps the wounds keep going with her. What is that?
Happy Birthday to Me or something.
Yeah, that's it. Happy Birthday to Me.
Yeah, we saw both of those.
Yeah, those are actually pretty good. I enjoy them anyway. But so you can see there with just those two, how that repeating day trope can go toward the horror, but just the idea that you're having to repeat the same day. They did somebody online, of course, figured out how long Bill Murray's character actually spent in that town, and it was like
10,000 days.
Oh no, I thought it was like 1,000 years or something. I don't know.
He got really good on the piano.
Long enough to learn the piano.
As a musician, that gave me an indication of it was at least 20 years of piano on display there.
Every lesson's his first lesson.
Yeah.
Well, there was one of the things that I read that goes through the original the script. In the script notes, it says 10,000 days.
10,000 days.
He repeats the same day 10,000 times till he gets it right.
I'm an English major now.
I killed myself about 6,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
10,000
Not
divided by
365 times
65.
27
years, a little over 27 years.
Yep.
I love how that movie never even tries to tell you why.
Yeah.
Carry the leap year.
I do like. You know what? That is so much a better choice than the giant info dump at the beginning. You know, it's better if you just don't explain it all. I'd prefer that. Like we watched the Dora movie. They never explained why there was a giant CGI fox hanging out with the smugglers. Just stuck it there. Because there's no good reason. There's nothing you could say that would make you go, okay. But if they just don't mention it, you're like, all right, this might as well happen.
Anybody else have anything?
Well, that also
do.
be the horror.
I'm thinking about Sam Raimi's original Evil Dead trilogy.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which went from hardcore horror to campy comedy in the space of 3 movies.
Yeah, the first Evil Dead was too scary for me, and I love and I've already mentioned that the third is the best American movie ever made.
And the second one goes from
it's a freaking masterpiece, but you know, it's, you know, you watch that movie and you're thinking, this is the same guy that did Evil Dead. It's the same main character, well, surviving character. And you know, it makes me always makes me wonder when I watch them, it's how the script meetings went.
And how much alcohol or other.
What do you think we should do with the sequel? Let's make it funnier.
Have you read Confessions of a Chin? I think is the name of it. Bruce Campbell's autobiography.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. But he seems to think that the all Sammy Raimi's plots were just, how can I do just horrible things to my friend who's more handsome than me? I hate him, but he's more handsome than me. What kind of vile liquids can I throw at him while hitting him in the balls? You know, that's the plot.
Valid.
I'd watch that movie.
Mm-hmm. You have watched that movie?
Yes, many times. Actually, I made my parents watch it. I told them it was the greatest American film ever made, and they sat down. They, of course, hated it, and my mother was just from the very beginning. How is that car still driving after it fell? How does it even have gas? How does it gas up the... And my father finally says, Jane, we'll never get through this movie if you complain about everything. She's like, okay, fine. And then my father made one comment, and it was when they had the big pit in this medieval setting, and all he said was, rivets. that was what broke him.
Sorry. Good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun is the greatest line in cinematic history.
Right.
All right, DeAnna, what you got?
Okay,
You
first I
forgot.
have to say Home Alone, Christmas movie, horror movie. Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Terrifying.
But this is just like the movie that I watched recently that was comedy horror that I had no idea what I was getting into when I picked this up. So I was quite amused and entertained. I love terrible movies a lot of the time, and this is like an intentionally terrible movie. It's a Japanese horror movie from 1977 called House. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's basically the fever dream of a 10-year-old telling her dad the plot of how this house is haunted and all of these schoolgirls go there and get murdered terribly. The director, I forget who his name is, he literally asked he's like, I'm going to make a haunted house movie. I will ask my daughter, what are you scared of? What horrible things should happen to these kids there? So it's this the horrible story, you know, this is a story that a 10-year-old took utterly seriously. But as an adult, you can't take it seriously because you know the tropes. You've seen this sort of thing so many times. Well, the director knew this, and he put in like the world's worst special effects ever. There's
I mean, have you seen Velocipaster?
One of the girls.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I have. I loved it. It was
I've
great.
been meaning to watch that one.
Velocipaster.
I've been meaning to watch that one.
Okay,
I
this
did
is on
watch
the same scope as Velocipaster. You have to watch it if you like
I
Velocipaster.
watched Jurassic Planet.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that one. Now,
Two
Iron
people punch a
Skies
Velociraptor
and
at the
Iron
same
Skies
time.
2.
That goes the other way. Best special effects ever.
Yeah, okay. Well, these are horrible special effects, and they're just beautiful. I cannot say too many good things about this cheesy, funny movie. I laughed just all through the whole thing. And, you know, in my heart of hearts, I'm like, I was that 10-year-old too. This would have terrified the holy crap out of me when I was that age.
I'd put in a plug for House 2, which is not the sequel to that house.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that one.
but House.
Where the guy
This
from
one has
Cheers
Cliff-
comes in with his
Yes, Cliff.
well, what you got here is this
kind
is
of
a
alternate universe.
pan-dimensional.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Cliff Glaze
Your
is
trans-dimensional
electrician
daughter. Yeah, I remember
and
that.
adventure. Here's the best part about that movie. I watched it the first time on acid. Amazing.
On that note,
I made good choices as a child. I'll mention I've been sober for 17 years. House 2 on acid might be the reason for that.
Well, good on House 2 then.
well, on that note, before we get out of here, let's let everybody know where to find you and what are the new releases, or what's the latest thing you got coming out, or what do they need to stuff into their Kindle that's brand new sitting on the shiny shelf after the holidays. So we're going to kind of work in reverse order this time because, you know, nobody's here to stop me from doing it. So Adam, we're going to go with you first.
You can find me at adamstemple.com. I've got the short story Simon's Teeth coming out in Dark Recesses print magazine. I've just wrapped up a trilogy, the Mika Bearhand books, that's available on Amazon. The first book's on sale right now, but it won't be by the time you get to this, so you'll have to pay full price. I'm very sorry. And that's what I got going.
Websites, social media?
adamstemple.com. You can get to all of it from there. Social media, Adam Stemple 4 on Twitter, Adam Stemple Books on Instagram, Adam Stemple on Facebook. It's all pretty. I have a Wikipedia page. Just, you know, look for me there. Look up Adam Stemple. It's all sorts of embarrassing pictures. It's me with hair. You can see me with hair down to my waist. It's amazing. I miss it.
Patrick?
Well, you can check out my most recent published story, Lamps Like Masks, in Stories We Tell After Midnight 3 in print or digital. And check out the Gothic podcast, wherever, as they say, you get your podcasts.
And website?
Oh, you can follow me on my website if you really want to. It's c-patrick.com.
Excellent.
I sometimes write stuff on there.
DeAnna?
You can find me at wonderlandpress.com. And I'm all over social media. There's only one of me, so if you find a DeAnna Knippling, that's me. And I'm going to say go to The House Without a Summer, which is that Gothic horror novel. I'm really proud of it. It's an excellent book.
And Ty, how about you?
Well, I've got a new horror novel coming out in 2022 called Rags, that is set in Atlantic City in 1982 in and around Steel Pier and the destruction of Steel Pier at that time. I'm really excited about it, and they're already getting a lot of attention. My other books are available on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. If you want a signed copy, you can go to tydrago.com and order them directly from there. And then there's the online magazine, allegoryezine.com. We've been around for 22 years. and we're one of the old ladies of the internet, publishing short stories from around the world.
And clutching your pearls.
And I'm all, I'm on. If you go to my web, tydrago.com, you'll find all my Facebook, Twitter, and all that business. That's all I got.
And I've had the pleasure of trying to herd these chickens. As we walk through the holiday horror, I'm Jim Nettles, and of course you can find me. Oh, go ahead.
Fucking.
Oh, Baga, yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't get it in there.
And y'all know where to find me. Never mind, I give up. We're all here. Everybody, by the time you see this, we hope you've had some great holidays. And if you didn't, well, now you got the horror to go right about with it too. We will see you guys again very soon. And thanks for coming to hang out with us.
Horrible holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.